Hey, what's up, everyone? Hey, I just wanted to kind of go back to the past and remember a legendary game to me, a legendary Sega game from back in the day. Of course, I say that a lot. I seem to say that a lot. But back in 1988, Sega had released this game right here, Galaxy Force 2, and what I wanted to kind of do was kind of go back and look at this game because, just like I said, it was released in 1988, and one of the things I really miss about going back to the arcades is you'd walk into the arcade, and I tell you, there were two tiers of games. There were just the regular run-of-the-mill games that everyone, we all remember as classics and everything, and then there were the Sega games, and you walk into the arcade, and Sega would have this big contraption set up. And I remember I was really, I guess you could call it shock and awe over this, because this was one of those full big setups. It had a big, huge, it looked like a flying saucer that you would get in, and it had ropes, like, when you go to the bank and there's those little ropes. So this whole machine was roped off. It was gigantic. And so you walk into the arcade and you see this big Sega setup, this arcade setup, and it looked like this. Oh my god. I mean, this is the game that made me just fall in love with Sega. Not so much as just a regular game company. That's one thing I have to stress. I used to think of Sega not so much as just a regular game company, but more like a technology company. These guys were, I just have to say, this game was, 10, 15 years way ahead of everyone else in the future. I mean, and what I'm going to do is illustrate that. Now, I have two versions of Galaxy Force 2 running. I have my Sega Saturn version. They actually ported this to the Japanese Sega Saturn, and unfortunately, we didn't get it here, so you would have to import this. But what makes this game so extremely special for me is the technology behind it. Now, it ran on three 68,000 16-bit chips, and wow, dude, this was something that anything at the time that was available, say, to the consumer, like back in the day, if you had a computer, a home computer or a home game console, that was made available to the public, there's no way that you would have been able to play anything that approached Galaxy Force 2. Now, that's just the way that it was, and this was just incredible. It was just... This is why Sega, to me, is just one of my premier companies. And it's funny that people don't really see Sega that way anymore. This was 1988. Look at that year, man. Look at that year. And they were producing stuff... something that looked like this? Come on. And you wouldn't be able to touch this. You wouldn't be able to touch this for years later. Now, like I said, I have this version on the Saturn running, and even this game, even as powerful as the Sega Saturn is, Sega Saturn came out in 1995, almost 10 years later, and even this version right here, even though it's a decent version, it's not arcade perfect. I mean, wow, I can't believe that. Even with the Sega Saturn hardware, this game was way, way, way ahead of its time. And the way I look at it now, I could put, I could play it in MAME. I mean, with a computer that's like 20 years, odd years into the future. Now I can finally play as a grown-up. I can finally play Galaxy Force the way it's supposed to look and sound and play. Wow. That's just my take on this game, and basically Sega in general. Sega's arcade games were just wonderful. They were just... That was where a lot of my imagination stems from, is playing Sega games, and games like Galaxy Force 2 and Space Harrier, just all those great, wonderful games. And that's the Sega of my youth, and that's what I've always looked up to. So... I mean, look how beautiful that looks. I mean, this is just all scaling sprites. You know, very fast moving. Unfortunately, the Sega Saturn doesn't have the same frame rate as the arcade, so it's not as smooth. But the gameplay is there, and this is about as good as I can get. Now, I understand. I believe there's a PlayStation 2 collection in Japan with a complete Galaxy Force that's supposed to be near perfect. So I'll seek that out. But guys, just want to kind of relate my memories to this game. That's Sega for you. That's what Sega was all about to me. So check you later.